If you want to get to that next level in your life, ministry, or relationships, then you can't keep following old patterns. So in this episode, we will talk about how you can start seeing massive changes by just adopting tiny shifts to your habits that you might already be doing.
You've got a dream to glorify God and make your mark on the world. Maybe you want to grow a business, start a ministry, or become a better servant leader. Whichever level in life you want to hit, I believe that God's calling all of us towards something greater than where we are now. So join me as I document my journey to learn how to grow an online ministry in ways that are effective, biblical, and aren't stuffed with complicated religious or business mumbo-jumbo. My name is Alec Kassan, and welcome to the Digital Ministry Mastermind Podcast.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. What's going on, Current Christian family? It is Alec here. And, if you're listening to this episode while you're driving, that is very coincidental because in this episode, I'm going to be sharing a story with you, something that's related with driving. And I just wanted to ask, have you ever had this experience before where you're like driving through your neighborhood or an area that you're like really familiar with and you find yourself almost like unconsciously turning down the wrong roads, that it's like you're turning down the road that leads to work, but meanwhile, you're actually trying to get to like the grocery store or something. I've had this happen to me one too many times. I would literally be driving down the highway, trying to get to the grocery store, trying to get to church, but I'd get that like highway hypnosis thing going on, and I find myself taking the exit towards work instead of taking the exit towards the destination that I need to go to. And what's crazy is that there's often this like disconnect of where we want to be and then the actions we take to get there. When we make these wrong turns in life, it's not because we are making the conscious decision to go in the wrong direction. No, if anything, it's our brain just trying to help us out by doing what we've done 1,000 times. And, in this example, it's driving to work. But if we're going to try to get to like a better place in our life or in our ministry, we can't settle for the comfortable habits that we are used to doing, because it would be taking us down the road to work when we're really trying to get to church, like metaphorically speaking. But if anything, our current habits, our current patterns that brought us to where we are. So if we want to get to someplace new, then we can't keep following these old patterns. So like Moses, when he was leading the Israelites through the desert, it was more than just, them leaving Egypt. The time in the desert was meant to help lead Egypt out of the Israelites. And it sounds kind of confusing, but what I mean by this is that these people, the Israelites, they were in Egypt for hundreds of years and had adopted the mindset and the culture of the Egyptians, which was like taking a road to work. But God wanted his people to take a different road, to have different thinking and have a different culture. So, sorry for the bus going by. So although God brought his people out of Egypt, the time in the desert was meant to take Egypt out of the people. And I want to help you break out of these little ruts too. That way you can get to the destination of a greater calling and more success, going into the promised land. In fact, I learned a trick during my time of unconsciously driving to work that has helped me to personally see greater success in honestly, in all areas of my life and not just driving. The tool that I'm going to tell you, it's simple. And in most circumstances, it's kind of contradictory to what other people recommend when it comes to breaking bad habits and adopting new ones. Because most of the time, people say that we need to have a dramatic change in our environment or drastic changes in our routine to push us out of a rut, especially if it's a deep rut. You can imagine like tires in like a rut or like a trail. If it's a deep rut, then obviously it's like, it's going to take a lot of effort to get those tires out of it. But what I'm going to share, it isn't dramatic. It isn't drastic. And in most instances, it's actually going to seem deceptively simple. And what I learned during my moments of highway hypnosis was that when I take the roads that I'm familiar with, I'll naturally start turning down the paths that I'm most comfortable with. So to break this habit, all I needed to do was make a small turn early on in the journey and venture down a new path. Is this making sense? Because I want you to imagine that you're doing this. You're driving to the grocery store, but instead of taking the road that you always take, you decide to turn down a road that you almost never go down. And what begins to happen is your mind, it starts focusing a little more on its surroundings. It starts being more aware of what's going on. And in most cases, if you're like me, it's like, oh, this is a new road. I have no clue where to go. I'm going to take out my GPS. And then, you take out your GPS so you don't get lost. And the same is true when you do this in other areas of your life or ministry, or relationships. Now, I'm not recommending, you take like a 30-minute detour, metaphorically speaking. All I'm saying is take just one small turn early on in the journey so that you'll be approaching things with a newer perspective and will be focusing harder on taking the path to bring you to where you want to go. Because if you've been coasting through life and you don't like where you are, then maybe you got to take a small detour so you can be more conscious of your surroundings and more conscious of your actions, Now this, it might make sense when it comes to driving, just like that person driving by with a really loud engine. But you might be asking, like, how the heck does this apply to like outside driver's ed, Well, think about it with, I've like my background is health and exercise science, so I'm going to use health example. So think about it with your fitness or your health. If every morning you default to just grabbing the easiest food, like a bowl of cereal, then you're essentially just starting your morning by filling your stomach up with just simple carbs and sugars. It's not very nutritious. And when it comes to having breakfast, like, you don't want simple carbs. You don't want just sugars. You need protein. You need nutrients. Because if you think about it, you just went 8 hours without eating and you're very dehydrated. And that stuff not only helps to dehydrate you even more, but it doesn't give you sustainable energy. And okay, I'm not going to go too deep into that. That's not what this episode is about. But I want you to now imagine, instead of doing a dramatic thing like throwing out all the cereal and every unhealthy food in the house, I just want you to imagine that you make a small shift early on. You take a tiny turn the night before. So let's say you just fill up a big glass of water and you place it on your countertop and you make some overnight oats. You put a couple scoops of protein in it and you just leave it in the fridge. So now when you wake up, you've got a nice tall glass of room temperature water to hydrate you, and you got some complex carbs plus protein to give you energy that you need. And also, it's going to help you feel full throughout the entire morning. Now that is an example of a small turn. That's a small shift that can lead to drastic changes down the road. You won't find yourself falling into the familiar, like snacking throughout the morning or resorting to like stimulants to keep you awake, because you're making the conscious decision to turn into new territory with a vision of where you want to go. So for some of you, preparing a glass of water the night before, that might be enough, but it all depends on where you are at right now. So if you're in a place where you can do a lot, then by all means, do a lot. But if you aren't in a place where you can do a lot, then just do whatever it is that you can do right now. Because like I said in the last episode, it doesn't matter where you are. What matters is where you end up. And if you want to get to church or the grocery store and you're finding yourself at this metaphorical, work parking lot every time you're driving down that road, then you got to commit to make a change. Maybe that change is doing something like reading a new book, maybe it's clearly writing out where you want to be instead of focusing on all the things that you don't want out of your life. And if you want to keep doing things the same way and be in the same place a year from now, then ignore what I'm saying, don't apply any of it. But if you want to be in a place where your life or your ministry is thriving and you're seeing more success in your walk with Jesus, then make that subtle change right now. Because I'm not saying you should try to do even more. Most times trying to go faster in life or trying to do more in life, that's not the right way to go. But if you're going down the wrong path, it won't matter how fast you go, and it also won't matter how much more you do, because fast is only going to get you to the wrong place quicker, So this subtle change that you should make in your life might actually require you to cut things out. That could be of your schedule, that could be out of your to-do list, that could just be out of things that you're worrying about. And instead of, like Netflix is a big one. So instead of nightly Netflix, you replace it. You replace that time with some nighttime reading in bed. If you have my book, Planting Your Purpose, place it on your pillow in the morning. And then when you see it at night, oh, boom, before your head hits the pillow, you got to pick up the book and then bam, you read it. And if you already did read it, then maybe go back and commit to applying like one lesson, or apply any of those epiphany moments that you had while you were reading it, and just stick to that throughout the week. Don't just do something now. That's what I really want to encourage you and inspire you to do, is just do something now that'll bring you into a state of being aware of where you're at, so that you don't wind up in a place you don't want to be. I don't want you to just have that highway hypnosis throughout your life. But like I said earlier, if you're trying to do more or move faster but aren't heading in the right direction, then you'll just be doing all these subtle shifts for nothing. So in the next episode, I'll be talking more in depth about defining that end destination so that you can finally get those results that you desire. And hey, if you really liked this episode or you learned some wisdom from it, then I would love for you to subscribe to show your support. And if you know of anyone who you think would benefit from learning this kind of information, then I invite you, please share this episode with them, or any prior episodes. That way we can all be on this journey to learn and grow together. So thank you guys so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.
Are you a Christian leader looking to develop the skills needed to maximize the fruitfulness in your daily walk with Christ? Do you want to overcome the burden of not living life to the fullest and fully step into your God-given calling? If you do, then you should get a copy of my book, Planting Your Purpose, a 20-day guide to discover God's calling. It's not just another devotional book. Planting Your Purpose is your 20-day guide that will provide you with the strategies, tools, and insights to turn things around immediately. You will learn how to avoid the top 5 mistakes Christians make when pursuing their calling in life. You'll develop more joy in your walk with Jesus and unlock the secrets to mastering integrity. And by the end of 20 days, not only will you know your calling, but you'll have an even greater sense of fulfillment and confidence in your life. Everywhere, Christians are raving about this amazing new guide to discover their God-given calling. Get your copy by clicking the link in the show notes or by going to plantingyourpurpose.com. That's plantingyourpurpose.com.